I'm wearing a Wolverine shirt and I have Pokemon behind me. Um, no, this is not about any of that stuff. This is a Digimon video. Um, I'm going to talk about the four Digimon sovereigns, or the four holy beasts, or so, as they are referred to as, that are from the Digimon Tamers. I already did a video where I talked about them to a degree when I talked about with Digimon Adventures. I did mention these four Digimon there, but we get to actually meet and interact with all four of them a bit more in Digimon Tamers than we did in Digimon Adventure. Also, they have, to a degree, we get a bit more on personality development on some of them, and we also get to have a bit more of a demonstration of what their role is in the digital world, or at least in this version of the digital world. So, in Digimon Adventures, they kind of seem to be somewhat not really around there, not really available or accessible very much beyond destroying the Destiny Stones, and the only one that we really interact with is Azulongmon, and then we see later on during Digimon Adventures Try, we get to see them a little bit more, and see a bit of their origin and stuff like that. And that is interesting to see because it gets you a little bit more information about those characters, a little bit more of like where those exceedingly overpowered Digimon came from. And then in Digimon Tamers, we get to see a little bit more of kind of what their role is. As I mentioned through several of the different, when I talked about Takato and Henry and Rika and stuff like that, and Ryu, I mentioned that that the group of kids, of course, ended up meeting the Digimon sovereigns. Now, to a degree, they've already started to have kind of an interaction with them, and the fact that they've been dealing with the Devas. And the Devas, which will probably be, the Devas kind of are going to get more of like their own videos as like the enemies, because that's what they are shown to be, their antagonists. And yes, one of the Digimon sovereigns does start out as being very antagonistic toward them, Chuchalmon, and I'll get to him. But it's a little bit more of a, they are a bit more antagonistic, but, not, the Devas more fall on the side of like definitely being enemies in that regard for the most part, minus Antilamon. But the other 11 do. And it's all of the other 11 Devas are all sent after the kids by Chuchalmon. I'll get a bit more about him in a moment. But they all go after, they're all sent after the kids into the real world, try to destroy the kids, destroy the real world, get Calamon, take your pick. And we find out later that they were sent by the Digimon Sovereign. They were sent specifically by Chuchalmon. And what we end up finding out once we get to the digital world, and once we see all of these different layers within the digital world, as the kids have to traverse through all the different layers, as I went through a little bit more in detail in like the making of the digital world video. One of those layers is the kind of the Sovereign's realm, I believe is what it was referred to as. And in that realm is where dwells all four of the Digimon sovereigns. And what we end up seeing is, of course, Antilamon is kind of one of the last Devas left, and she's, guarding one of the gates. And then, of course, stuff happens. She bonds with with Susie, and everything happens there, and becomes Susie's partner. And then we have it where the Tamers are like, okay, well, we need to go and speak with the Digimon Sovereign. And Antilamon takes them in to go and see Chuchalmon. And while they're there, Chuchalmon ends up attacking them. This is when Henry and Terriermon biomerge into Mega Gargomon for the first time, and all of that. And, we see that interaction there. And then, of course, Chuchalmon is very much kind of the very representing anger, I guess, in this regard. He's very much like, kind of the desperation side of things in regards to how the different Devas are dealing with having to deal with the D-Reaper, because it's re-emerged at this point in time, and the four sovereigns cannot agree on a strategy of how to defeat it. Chuchalmon wants to do one thing, Azulongmon wants to do something else. And Bowman wants to do something else. Baihuman, he does something else. They all want to do a different strategy, and just like any version of politicians, leaders, anywhere, they cannot really agree on what the strategy should be. To a degree, they are kind of like politicians in the digital world, although I do not believe that they were elected to their current positions. It's, oh, I'm exceedingly powerful Digimon and I'm stronger than most other, mega level Digimon. So yeah, I'm in charge now. It's kind of the way that works. Kind of the way that appears to work. But what ends up happening is, of course, during the fight between Henry and Chu Chaomon, eventually Takado does end up joining the fight, and the two of them, I do believe that the two of them are able to injure Chu Chaomon, and then Azulongmon shows up at some point in time in that regard, and he makes them stop fighting, and he just kind of is like, it's kind of like Rayquaza showing up and like making Groudon and Kyogre just like stop fighting, and Digimon is just like, okay, back to your own corners, type of a thing. He's like the referee showing up at a boxing match, but he's like, okay, stop, back to your own corners and calm down. And Azulongmon very much represents the voice of reason within the sovereigns. Using wisdom and that type of a thing in order to, figure up what his intention, figure up the best path forward. We find out that he is the one who turned Calamon, the catalyst of Digivolution, into Calamon, and then sent the catalyst to Earth. And Chu Chaomon is, of course, when he found out about this, he's the one that then sent the Davis after Calamon to then bring Calamon back. And, then, trap Calamon, and then Calamon does end up escaping, of course. And being reunited with them and helping them anyway, but I haven't gotten to that yet. And what we end up seeing is, of course, Azulongmon is trying to, reason with Chu Chaomon. They're just kind of like, okay, stop. You saw what those kids are capable of. You saw what the humans are capable of when they biomerge with their Digimon. When they get to that point, you saw what they could do. They were able to cause you damage. Maybe we should, not try to hurt the humans. Maybe we should try to work with the humans in order to try to defeat the D-Reaper. They may have abilities in that regard that we don't have. They may be able to help us or see something from a different perspective that we don't have on this matter. And Chu Chaomon is very much reluctant in that regard. He doesn't want to work with the humans by any means. In that regard, Azulongmon also points out, they also basically defeated every single one of the Davis that you sent after them, except the rabbit, who is now the Digimon partner of one of them, of the small girl. It's just all of the ones you sent after them are now gone. The one that befriended them is still here. So we have all of that. And during the same time frame, Rio is off, and he ends up meeting Bowman and Baihuman. I can always say Azulongmon and Chu Chaomon just fine, or at least that's the way that they're pronounced in the English dub. The other two I always have an issue with, and I don't know why. I guess I just didn't hear their names enough, even though I've watched the episode several times. I guess it just doesn't click in my head very well. And, of course, what ends up happening is, Azulongmon explains to them what the D-Reaper is. They see them fighting the D-Reaper. They interact with all four of the sovereigns. Takado, Henry, Kazu, and Kenta end up, I was going to say free sailing, or free climbing down a cliff on Azulongmon's beard, which is just funny, when they're trying to go and see where Rika went to go and get Calamon. And so we get all of that interaction there. And of course, the sovereigns end up asking Calamon if Calamon will help them in regards to, sending out his power in order to allow so many of the other Digimon in the digital world to Mega Evolve, so that way they can come and help fight the D-Reaper. And, Calamon agrees. He's like, yeah, well, Azumamon's really nice, and I really want to help him, and blah blah blah. And, releases it. Does the shining Digivolution and everything, and does all of that, and makes all these other Digimon Mega Evolve and show up and help fight the D Reaper. And then the kids have to then go back to the real world, and we do get a moment where we see video feed kind of from the digital world about like what's been going on there, and we see the different sovereigns fighting against the D Reaper in the digital world while the kids are having to fight against it in the real world. And we see Chu Chaomon, and Lopmon is very concerned about Chu Chaomon because he was her leader for a time. He was her leader for a good majority of her life, and her sovereign. And she does care about him, and she doesn't like the fact that he's being hurt, and that there's not much she can do about it. And kind of the last interaction that we get with the sovereign, canonically wise in this regard, is when sorry, I'm tired. I didn't sleep exceedingly well last night. And what ends up happening is when the D Reaper kind of tries to fully, I guess, connect with itself in the digital world, the one in the real world tries to connect with the one in the digital world, and the part of it that had been inside of the digital world kind of comes through. The sovereigns are actually the ones that like show up and like drag it back down into the digital world, and like help with that and everything, so that way they're removing it from the battle, so that way the kids can deal with the one that's in the real world, and then it allows them to then allows the monster makers to then use Operation Doodlebug in order to just destroy the D Reaper and everything. And for all intents and purposes, that's like the last time that we interact with the Digimon Sovereign in this regard, because unless they did something in some of the other extra materials that I'm just not aware of, which I thought I looked through stuff and I didn't find anything else, they haven't really been mentioned. They're not mentioned in the epilogue, which isn't exceedingly all that important. But we get those interactions there. Now onto them all individually. So this is something that I did point out when I talked about the Digimon Sovereign, or the other, I believe they're referred to as the harmonious ones, in Digimon Adventures. And I pointed out that they are based off of the 4 cardinal directions in regards to how, I believe it is the way that Japan tends to associate different animals with different, parts of the compass. And of course there's in the north, which is why I have the Pokemon out here, they're actually facing the correct directions, I believe, or representing the correct directions, because that way is north. We have the Mbahumon, who is the black tortoise of the north, is what he is representing. And they point this out in Digimon Tamers as well, and I just, as a kid, I didn't know exactly how that always, associated with everything in regards to the different Digimon and stuff in Japan, because it wasn't something that I was familiar with. I didn't figure it out until later, and a little bit through One Piece in regards to certain things. People throwing out theories and stuff like that, and then I'm like, oh, well, that sounds familiar. Oh, well, that's why that does sound familiar. It's because I've seen that in Digimon before. So Mbahumon is this giant tortoise that has 2 heads. Why he has 2 heads, I don't know, but he has 2 heads. And he interacts with Ryo and Cyberdramon first, and Ryo thinks that Cyberdramon wants to like fight Mbahumon, but that's not what Cyberdramon wants to fight. He wants to fight the D Reaper. And they show up at one of the castles, because like all the different sovereign have like their own castle in like their specific cardinal direction within the realm of the sovereigns and such, and then they can all like connect to each other, so they all kind of live next to each other, I guess. And Mbahumon is actually inside of Baihumon's realm at that point in time, inside of his territory, because he's guarding it while Baihuman is trying to fight the D Reaper. And in the English, I don't know if this is based off of something that they did in the Japanese, but in the English, Ibarihumon, both of the heads kind of sound, I think, Scottish. And don't ask me why, I don't know. And they're like, I don't know, they sound kind of like old Scottish men, I think, or Scottish or Irish men, something like that. And they sound somewhat like they're arguing with each other at times, but also just like the whole, like, the old guy of like, yeah, I'll whip you if you do something you're not supposed to type of a thing. Old men that have seen a lot and are just like, yeah, I can kick your butt if I want to, but I really don't want to. I'm just tired type of a thing. It's like the energy that they give off. And, and Baihumon seems to be much more of the laid back one out of all of the different sovereign. And they interact with Rio a bit and talk with him, and then Baihumon shows up again, and he's been somewhat hurt by the D Reaper. And Baihumon is showing that he does, and Baihumon, whatever, shows that he is very much caring about the other sovereigns. Like, they all care about each other to a degree, even if they do argue and fight with each other at times. Yes, your gods are fighting. That's a wonderful way of keeping the digital world whole. Love of power, take your pick. And my way is the right way because I'm the strongest. It was just like, okay, sure, whatever. And he is, of course, there when they interact with the kids later on, and all that stuff shows up, helps drag down the D Reaper. There's not too much interaction we get with Embaumon, but he's kind of nice. I do like his design. And then we have one of the main ones that we, of course, interact with, which is Chuchaomon, who is a representative of the vermilion bird of the south, represented here by Torchic. I scrounged. I was like, I know I have something here that'll work for all of these ones in some form. I was just like, well, I got the grass turtle and I got the fire bird and whatever. So as I mentioned, Chuchaomon is very much kind of the one that sent all of the different devas after the kids and everything in an attempt to capture Chuchaomon, and eventually succeeded via Makuramon capturing Chuchaomon and bringing him back to the digital world. And eventually it does end up being that, as I said, Antilamon is actually the one that is guarding his gate when Susie ends up arriving in the digital world. She is the one that is, he's, being, his gate is being guarded by Antilamon at that point in time. And, Antilamon takes Henry and Takato and some of the other, and Rika, I believe, into the castle to meet Chuchaomon to try to, reason with him. As I stated, Chuchaomon does not have any of this. He doesn't want to reason with the children. He just wants to fight them and make them go away or kill them or whatever you want to go with, because he's the one that then made the deal with Beelzemon, Itmon turning him into Beelzemon in order to make Beelzemon go after the kids and destroy them. And of course, I've talked enough about Beelzemon in other videos. In Jerry's video, in Beelzemon's video, in Calamon's video, I talked about Beelzemon and Itmon a lot. Lotmon tries to reason with Chuchaomon, and he doesn't want to, and he, of course, ends up attacking, and this is, of course, when, Henry and, as I said, Henry and Terramon biomerge into Mega Gargamon, and they are able to cause quite a bit of damage to Chuchaomon. Something said that they were able to, hold off hurt one of his wings really badly, but he is based off of a phoenix, so him having healing powers is pretty understandable. But there's not too much else that goes in with that part. He's, of course, very angry at them, and then, of course, that's when Azulongmon shows up and makes them stop, and, reveals, the catalyst is Calamon and all of that stuff, and, gets Chuchaomon to just, begrudgingly admit that the kids are strong enough to be able to help them and all of that stuff. So we have that moment there with them, which is funny. It's like just like the reasonable older brother in the form of a Zulongmon showing up, and Chuchalmon is just like the younger brother that just wants to fight, and it's just like just calm down. It's okay. Just go sit in the corner and eat your snack. I'll deal with the other people, type of a thing. It's like we're gonna try the diplomatic approach now. Go over there. And Chuchalmon, he's still not the most interested in helping the kids and everything like that, but he is there and willing to help and everything. Chuchalmon, I don't know if it's all four of them or if it's just Chuchalmon, but one of them, either all four of them or just Chuchalmon is the one that sends Dobermon into the real world in order to give the kids the ability to biomerge in the real world. So that way they are able to help fight against, the D Reaper that way. And of course, then we have it that, as I said, during the final battle, they come up and pull down that part of the D Reaper. Next up, we have kind of the one that we're at least the most familiar with just because we've seen him before, and even Takato mentions when they meet a Zulongmon. Zulongmon is a representative of the Azure Dragon of the East. Represented over here, not very well because you can't really see it on the blue sheet, on the blue comforter. Represented by a blue dragon beanie baby. Insert Kaido joke here with him being a giant blue dragon. That was like, wait, why does that seem familiar with Kaido being a giant blue dragon? Oh yeah, Zulongmon. Although Zulongmon, well, I don't know who would win in a fight between a Zulongmon and Kaido. I don't know how Digimon tend to associate with One Piece. I don't know how well that would go. But what ends up happening is, Takato points out that, like, when they meet a Zulongmon, he's like, wait a minute. Aren't you like the Zulongmon that we saw on the TV show type of a thing? And I don't know if a Zulongmon has any reference for that or anything like that. That would be funny if he went like, yeah, sure. Yeah, that was me. Sure, whatever, kid. It just like goes about his day. But Zulongmon, as I mentioned, is generally the one that is the much more amicable out of the different sovereigns, tending to wanting to try to get along the path where there's most of everybody is going to get along, or where there's a good amount of cooperation and teamwork and stuff like that. It is stated that he is the one that had the catalyst turned into Calamon by the Diginomes and then, sent to the real world because he figured Calamon would be safer there. And then, of course, he's able to, Calamon agrees to, of course, use Shining Digivolution to allow a bunch of the other Digimon to Digivolve to Mega and show up and help. Again, a Zulongmon is much more of like the kind elder type of representative is what he's supposed to show, I'm pretty sure. And then we have the last Digimon Sovereign, and that is Baihumon, and that is the White Tiger of the West. Represented here, again, on a not the very best version of a white tiger. Not a beanie baby, but just one of the other stuffed ones that I have from the zoo at times. Side out here, I know a lot of people thought that like Yamato in One Piece was going to end up being a white tiger as like their as their devil fruit, but that didn't happen. It was something else. Baihumon is this other representative. He lives in this white tower that is at the highest of the plane of the digital world and everything like that. He it kind of first meets Ryomon and Cyberdramon there, while Baihumon is guarding his territory at the time. Well, Baihumon is trying to go and like fight the D Reaper, kind of like this moment of like, I guess, trying to just like go and like just like end it now. It's just like, well, I'm just gonna go after the D Reaper now, so that way it's taken care of. See if I can get rid of it myself so the others don't have to deal with it, type of a mentality. Doesn't really work. He still gets injured. Doesn't get destroyed or anything like that, but he does still get injured. And he's, just exhausted and everything from trying to fight the D Reaper, and it doesn't do very much. He's there when they're all meeting the kids and everything like that, and, Calamon and Shining Digivolution and everything. So there's not too much that happens there. Again, all of them are there in the battle when they pull, part of the D-Reaper back into the digital world so the kids can fight it in the real world without having to deal with this part and everything. Yeah, we never really get any form of like a catch up with the Digimon Sovereigns, mostly just because I guess it's like not necessarily exceedingly important. I would assume that if they ever did end up doing another series or a movie or something like that for the Digimon Tamers kids, which I personally would be perfectly fine with if they did, if they decided to do that, I'd be fine with it. But they're doing another Digimon thing with like with Davis and his group now, so I'm like, okay, we'll see what happens with that. But if they ever did wanted to do stuff with the Digimon Tamers kids or with the Digimon Frontiers kids again, that type of stuff, I'm more than happy to watch. More than happy for that. Sure, go ahead. Make me cry about my childhood again. I'm all for it. Sure, whatever. And what ends up happening, what I would expect to happen if they ever did end up doing something where they show the Digimon Tamers again, is if they ever did go to the digital world again, possibly. I don't think like the D-Raper is going to be like the threat again, but like I could see them interacting with like the Sovereigns again. That type of a thing. Probably not too much. There's not really that much that happens. The Sovereigns are only there for a couple of episodes. We know that they're kind of like, Chalmon was like this presence in the background because he's the one that sent the Devas in the first place. Although, supposedly the Devas are supposed to serve where it's like 3 Devas serving each of them because there's 12 Devas and there's 4 of them. So it's supposed to be like 3 Devas serving each of them in each of their realms. As acting, I guess, like their ambassadors or lieutenants or stuff like that to each other or to the rest of the digital world. And it's a little bit left up for debate, I guess, of like how much any of the other Digimon in the digital world are like on any of the other levels are aware. How many of them are exceedingly aware of the Sovereigns. I don't know really in that regard if that would be the case. Not that I can think of. I don't know. I don't remember if we ever see anything where like any of the other Digimon in the other areas mention the Digimon Sovereign, as far as I can. Not that I can remember. Admittedly, I do probably am just a bit more biased toward Azulongmon just because he's the one that we kind of get to see the most in all of the different anime series. I know that the Sovereigns have like different uses that they have like in the different video games and stuff like that, where you play either where you have to like fight the Sovereigns at some point in time just to like show your strength, or you can fight them for fun, I guess, to prove how, again, to show your strength. But there's not too much else there. I don't really know that much about them. I know in the card game they're probably pretty powerful, but again, I never played the Digimon card game. I just bought the cards because they look kind of fun and I could get them cheap. Although what would be funny if in Digimon Tamers, because like Takato and the others still play the game. It's not like they don't play the card game anymore. Even though they have their own Digimon, they still play the card game and stuff. But I think it would be funny if like somehow they ended up opening like a pack, like opening packs of the new cards, and like there's like a Zulongmon and Chalmon and that type of stuff, and it's just like, well, I guess we could see if we can use these in the game or whatever. That would be kind of funny. See how that went. Not really too much else there I wanted to point out about the Digimon Sovereign for this. No, not really anything else that I can think of that goes with them in this regard. I'm trying to think of what the next one of these would be. I'm kind of I think I'm almost done with like the Digimon allies that they have. Because I did the Monster Makers, I did Digimon and Babamon for fun. Now I've done the Digimon Sovereign. The Devas, as I said, are going to more go into the antagonist side of things when I get to them. But just because of the fact of like they're not really they're not really allies, and Tiamat is the only one that ends up being an ally because of Susie, and the rest of the Devas are all very much antagonistic towards the kids, and trying to stop them and against humans and everything like that. Which, I mean, to a degree, I'm not surprised by that. As in, and I'll bring this up again when I do the Devas videos, but Henry makes the comment, or Henry Sensei, I should say. The Sensei, that was one of the other ones I wanted to talk about, was the Sensei in a different episode. I forgot about that one, but him. Henry Sensei, I want to talk about him. Different video, but if the Devas, in their perspective, they are doing the right thing because they're trying to protect the digital world from the humans who, as far as they're aware, just destroy Digimon or enslave them in the form of making them their partners. Even though we know that that's not true, and the kids know that that's not true, that they did not enslave their Digimon. Their Digimon chose to be with them, or that there is that bond there, and that type of thing. Whereas the Devas think that it's just like, oh, they've been enslaved. Not true. And that's where it's just like this representation of like it's coming from two different sides of the same coin. But that's what I have there. I do thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!